Following the recent attacks on Iran's nuclear sites, the former chief United Nations weapons inspector in Iraq warns of the potential consequences.
Iran is not a threat to the West, so I don't think that there is any justification for attacking it. The Israeli attack is one that, if anything, will stimulate Iran to move towards nuclear weapons in the future.
Is the US and its Western allies ignoring the lessons from recent history? We ask a former US Congressman.
We know that the Iraq war was based on a lie. This planned or pre-planned attack against Iran is also based on lies. That Iran, according to our own intelligence agencies, isn't working on a nuclear weapon.
Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Rida Fakhri. On June 12th, the Board of Governors of the IAEA formally declared Iran in breach of some of its nuclear commitments, citing a report published in May by the nuclear agency. It stated that Iran's failure to grant full access to inspectors constitutes, quote, non-compliance with its nuclear obligations. The following day, on June 13th, Israel carried out several airstrikes on Iran, including on its nuclear facilities at Natanz and Fordo. It also assassinated Iranian nuclear scientists and military chiefs. Among the casualties of the initial Israeli strikes, Ali Shamkhani, Iran's lead negotiator. Just days earlier, he'd signaled Iran's willingness to dismantle its stockpiles of highly enriched uranium, enrich only to lower levels needed for civilian use, and allow international inspectors to supervise the process. All this in exchange for the immediate lifting of economic sanctions. Here's a look back now at the last 10 years of nuclear diplomacy with Iran and the United States' latest intelligence assessment.
Today, after 2 years of negotiations, the United States, together with our international partners, has achieved something that decades of animosity has not: a comprehensive long-term deal with Iran that will prevent it from obtaining a nuclear weapon.
The Iran deal is defective at its core. If we do nothing, we know exactly what will happen. Therefore, I am announcing today that the United States will withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal.
I am not saying that we have concerns. To the contrary, we stated that Iran was implementing its nuclear-related commitments and that we had access to all sites and locations that we needed to have access.
The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003.
We still uphold the fatwa of the Supreme Leader and move forward accordingly. We have to see how events unfold in the future, but for now, we have no intention of going toward a nuclear bomb.
In recent months, Iran has taken steps that it has never taken before, steps to weaponize this enriched uranium. And if not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time.
Now, it's not difficult to see parallels between Benjamin Netanyahu justifying attacks on Iran and the build-up to the 2003 invasion of Iraq, which he also strongly advocated for. One of the loudest voices opposing that invasion, based on false claims that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, was Hans Blix, former head of the IAEA and, at the time, the UN Chief Weapons Inspector. So, is history repeating itself? Hans Blix joins us now. Dr. Blix, this was you addressing the UN Security Council for the last time as UN Chief Weapons Inspector in June of 2003, just after the US launched its invasion of Iraq on the false premise of weapons of mass destruction. Today, Israel has attacked Iran's nuclear facilities, saying that there was an imminent nuclear danger. Do you buy that?
Well, it was contended by the US that Iraq had activities leading to a nuclear weapon, and they did not have the evidence. And we had carried out some 700 inspections without seeing any evidence. We have understood that the US objective was more importantly regime change, which they achieved, but with results that are we all regret. In the case of Israel's attack on Iran today, I think it is quite clear that is a straight violation of the UN Charter. The Charter allows self-defense against an armed attack.
And that's Article 51 of the UN Charter.
It's Article 51, and Iran had performed no armed attack on Israel. Israelis have long had suspicions that Iran was moving towards a nuclear weapon. However, there is no evidence that they have, and I think the IAEA has testified that they do not see any evidence of Iran's moving in that direction. On the contrary, for a very long time, the Western states were negotiating with Iran about its nuclear program, and in 2015, they reached an agreement under which Iran promised to cut down their nuclear energy program to a size which was compatible with a peaceful program. Iran did reduce their nuclear activities. In response, in return for that, the other side, including the United States, agreed to commit itself to dropping the economic sanctions against Iran.
Which they never did. Some are using the fact that Iran does have highly enriched uranium to suggest that there is a nuclear danger. As far as I know, neither does the NPT nor do the safeguards of the IAEA put any limits on how much uranium can be enriched. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. The increase of radiation level, enrichment level to 60%, was in retaliation for the US abandoning its commitment to drop economic sanctions. After a year, Iran declared that they will retaliate by increasing enrichment. And they declared that they were ready to go back to the 3.67% that they had committed, provided that the US would also go back to the 2015 agreement. The US didn't do that. And then Iran gradually increased the level of enrichment. That's a threat, but they have not gone beyond 60%. And they have declared repeatedly that they are against the weaponization.
When we spoke a few years ago, you said to me that hypothetically, even a nuclear-armed Iran would not justify a war. It would not justify an attack. And you also said that if Iran was to develop a nuclear weapon, it would be a way to neutralize Israel's nuclear weapons, its arsenal. Is that even more valid today?
Yes, I think the better solution, and I'm not alone in thinking so, would be to set up a nuclear weapon-free zone for the Middle East. And I think Israel would gain by seeing and participating in such a zone, because Israel may fear that Saudi Arabia and Turkey and Egypt might move to nuclear weapons.
But how do you achieve this when Israel's official policy is one of ambiguity and opaqueness?
Yes, I mean, it's the worst, least well-kept secret in the world, are the Israeli nuclear weapons. And that was as a result of an agreement within Nixon administration. But it's clear that they have a good supply of nuclear weapons.
If Iran had been interested in pursuing a nuclear weapon, and the United States' own intelligence assessment from just a few weeks ago said that they were not pursuing a weapon, and in fact, since 2003, had abandoned any such pursuits. But if they had been, would they have remained in the NPT?
Well, it remains there is no violation of the NPT. The NPT only enjoins its partners not to develop nuclear weapons, and Iran maintains that they are not. And the IAEA has advanced no evidence. They have noted that Iran has not fulfilled all obligations of safeguards verification. That's another matter.
Not a single Western intelligence agency has said that Iran was developing a nuclear weapon.
No, on the contrary, you are right in saying that the CIA declared some years ago that they believed Iran had had a nuclear weapon program but abandoned it to 2003.
And it's
That is
worth
well-
also mentioning, Dr. Blix, that there was a fatwa that was issued by Iran's supreme leader Khamenei in 2005, banning the development of nuclear weapons, calling them un-Islamic.
Yes, that the Iran regime has stood by that. But of course, if they continue being attacked by Israel, one doesn't know whether they would change their view in the future. I think the Israeli attack is one that, if anything, will stimulate Iran to move towards nuclear weapons in the future. I hope that will not be the case, and I hope that they will stay with the non-proliferation treaty.
Dr. Blix, your former colleague, the former Director General of the IAEA, Mohammed al-Baradei, he said that this war of aggression, in his words, will destroy the NPT and fuel nuclear proliferation. Do you share his assessment? Is Iran now more likely, not less, but more likely to go toward an actual nuclear weapon? And would it be the only way, as al-Baradei suggests, of sending, quote, a clear message to many countries that their ultimate security is to develop nuclear weapons?
Well, the Iranians could, of course, look at North Korea and at Libya and saying that North Koreans are not being attacked because they have the weapon. Libya promised and did away with their nuclear program, and they were attacked. The signs from outside is not very encouraging for Iran to stay non-nuclear. So I think the US has been going in the wrong direction.
Many are asking themselves, why should the Western world accept a nuclear-armed Israel, but not a nuclear-armed Iran?
I think the world has remained critical of the Israeli development of nuclear weapons. And I think that they would gain in joining a nuclear weapon-free zone in which they sacrificed their own nuclear weapons and got instead certainty that all the other states in the region will also forego nuclear weapons. I don't see any signs of the belligerent Israel moving in that direction, however.
Looking back at the United Nations Security Council resolutions, there was one in 1981 under the Reagan administration that called on Israel to urgently place its nuclear weapons arsenal under IAEA safeguards. Why hasn't it happened so far?
I don't know. They are moving towards a greater Israel, and I think their calculations might be that they would keep their neighbors as weak as possible and retard any risk that they see coming up by aggressive war or by assassination even. Iran is not a threat to the West. Iran wanted to raise the economic sanctions and was prepared and did promise to keep its nuclear program to a level compatible and consonant with the peaceful use of nuclear energy. So I don't think that there is any justification for attacking it. And I think that major motivation may well be to attack seeking a regime change. That weapons of mass destruction is a convenient excuse, but the reality is, like the US attack on Iraq in 2003, regime change.
What needs to change urgently to ensure that we do not face another potential Iraq situation?
Well, I think the keys lie in Washington, but it was hopeless to demand that Iran should totally abstain from enrichment. The solution to which the US agreed in 2015 was satisfactory, and it was verified, and Iran was respecting it. It was broken by the US and Trump administration in 2018, and it's gone bad since then. Israel has never liked the solution, but it was respected by Iran fully. And I think that it was disastrous when the Trump administration, the last administration, deviated from that. They was said that they withdrew from the 2015 solution. That's not the right expression. They broke it.
As a former Director General of the IAEA, were you surprised to hear the current head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, fail to condemn Israel's attacks against Iran's nuclear facilities? Do you believe it was an oversight?
Yes, I think he must condemn any violence against nuclear installations. The General Conference of the IAEA has condemned and warned against such violations, and I think he must be on that side.
Dr. Hans Blix, former Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, such a pleasure to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So is the US repeating the same mistakes it made in the run-up to the Iraq War? Former US Congressman and presidential candidate Dennis Kucinich was one of the most outspoken opponents of the 2003 invasion. He joins us now. Congressman Kucinich, since 1996, Netanyahu has been going to the US Congress, where you served for many years, telling Congress members that Iran was, quote, extremely close to having a nuclear weapon, and that has gone on for decades. Do you believe the Israeli Prime Minister?
He's the Prime Minister, but he's also a huckster. What is he selling? He's selling fear. He's selling the thought, not the reality, that a country is going to attack him with a nuclear weapon that they don't have, according to our own intelligence agencies. So, you know, his fear-mongering has worked, as well as the contributions that come in from AIPAC to members of Congress to encourage support for Israel.
But was this ever about Iran's nuclear weapons, or was it always about regime change?
What does regime change mean? Regime change means that you put in a puppet to be at the service of whatever interest, in this case, Israel and the United States. This is the dumbest plan I've ever seen.
But so why are your former colleagues, Democratic Congress members, going along with this?
There's a number of reasons why. First of all, some sincerely believe that Israel is of paramount importance to the United States as a philosophical and spiritual matter. There's a few who believe that. There's others who are heavily influenced by the campaign contributions they get from Israeli-aligned interests. And there's others who are just inveterate hawks who believe that America has to keep extending its role in the world militarily. Whatever they believe, the exigent facts are this. Number one, Iran is not working on a nuclear weapon. Number two, Iran has never attacked any of their neighbors. They've worked defensively. Number three, Iran has a right to be able to have nuclear power. Number four, Donald Trump canceled the JCPOA agreement, which allowed regulation of Iran's nuclear condition.
What happens now? Where does all this leave the United States' credibility, whatever remains of it, and its national security?
Well, first of all, you spoke to Hans Blix. We know that the Iraq War was based on a lie, that Iraq did not have anything to do with 9/11, with al-Qaeda's role in 9/11, didn't have the intention or capability of attacking the United States. This planned or pre-planned attack against Iran is also based on lies. That Iran, according to our own intelligence agencies, isn't working on a nuclear weapon. Now, Israel Netanyahu in particular, has been, as you say, beating the drum about Iran has a weapon, Iran has a weapon, Iran has a weapon, kind of like Chicken Little, the sky's falling, the sky's falling, the sky's falling. there's a point at which he doesn't have any credibility. But if the United States relies on him for its foreign policy decisions instead of our own intelligence agencies, that's a real problem. The fact that the president would dismiss the work of 18 different agencies in assessing that Iran was not working on a nuclear weapon speaks volumes of where is he getting his information from then? Because if his source of information is Netanyahu, heaven help us, we're looking at a prime minister of Israel whose government has established itself as genocidal, as involved in ethnic cleansing and starving people. It's astonishing that the United States could be in this place where we have made book with a government, a foreign government, that is involved in such carnage and that has such designs.
Is it in the national security interests of the United States to fight a war with Iran at the behest of Israel?
Of course it's not. The founders of our nation warned against any type of foreign entanglement. And that's what's happened here. We can't have any nation try to exist to subjugate other nations. And I think that what we're finding out here in the United States is that there's a moment where we're in a constitutional crisis. The president has ignored Congress in the use of military force, and that he's acting in a unilateral way. And that's not just unconstitutional, it is illegal.
Why do you think
we're
they
really
launched
in
the
a-
attack now,
Go ahead.
Congressman? Do you think it was to sabotage the nuclear negotiations that were going on with Iran?
What it appears that's happened here could be called perfidy, treacherousness, deceit, in stringing Iran along to prepare for an attack against them. That's what I think happened. I don't think it had anything to do with about honest negotiations. I think you have to keep something in mind, that the Biden administration and other administrations, Democrat and Republican before him, have the same policy: get Iran. And so we're seeing this unfold, only with a higher degree of deceit. This is madness. It is absurd. We must change our foreign policy in the United States. We must stop this unilateralism. We must stop this being influenced by foreign interests who don't care about the U.S., who wouldn't come to our aid if we had a problem. And I think that we now have to come to an understanding that the system that we have is geared up for war, and unless we start to change it, it will consume us. And we go on as a glorious attempt to rule the world with our great weapons. How absurd, how immoral, how totally wicked this kind of a pursuit is. So America has to change its ways.
Will anything ever change as long as the powerful pro-Israel lobby wields this much influence over Congress and the administration?
You know, it can begin with having those people who are lobbying on behalf of Israel have to register as foreign agents, so we know who they are, and to change the campaign finance laws to make sure that their influence is limited. That's where it starts. I mean,
But this isn't going to happen when so many people are benefiting from this system.
You're absolutely right, but it's not just the politicians who are benefiting. It's the arms manufacturers. It's the so-called advisors who are part of those think tanks in Washington who actually write the documents that help to influence the policy to attack Iran.
In all of your years in the US Congress, did anyone ever mention Israel's nuclear weapons arsenal? Should we be talking about that as well?
Never has been, never discussed. And yes, all the cards have to be on the table. And I think that it's incumbent upon us to have more of an arm's length relationship with Israel. But I want to point something out here. And I will say it again. I don't think those negotiations were ever in good faith, ever. I think it was all about stringing Iran along, and what's been created here is a shattering of trust, so that who's going to trust the U.S. in anything that's been said by those who are who represent this country in foreign relations abroad. That's one of the casualties of this moment. Trust.
Former Congressman Dennis Kucinich, great to have you again. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
We've been here before. More than 20 years ago, Hans Blix warned the US, the UK, and their allies against invading Iraq on the basis of unfounded evidence of weapons of mass destruction. They didn't listen. 2 decades later, the same narrative is back. Illegal military strikes on the basis of mere suspicions. If a wider war does unfold with the involvement of several nuclear-armed states, it won't be because there were no peaceful alternatives. It will be because those in power in Tel Aviv, Washington, and other Western capitals chose once again not to take them. That's all from me, Rida Fakhri, and the entire team. Thanks for watching.